Welcome to the deep dive. If you're tracking the strategic evolution of modern business, well, today we're zeroing in on something huge. An organizational challenge so vast, so complex, it's basically redefining an entire industry.
Mm.
We're talking about the pharmaceutical sector's digital transformation, DT as it's often called.
Yeah, and it's so much more than just, buying some new software.
Exactly. This is fundamental, a multi-billion-dollar shift in, well, everything. How drugs are developed, how they're marketed, how they actually get to patients.
Right.
So our mission here in this deep dive is simple. Give you the shortcut. The absolute essentials, the strategic foundations, the core financial investments, and the specific high-value initiatives that are really driving this change, all tailored so you can grasp it quickly.
And it's critical to grasp because the stakes are incredibly high.
They really are, and we need to establish that right out of the gate because the risk of failure here, it's honestly staggering. Research shows, something like 70%?
A massive 70%, yeah. Of these big digital transformation projects, they just don't make it across the finish line.
And here's the real kicker, the part that caught my eye. That failure rate isn't usually about bad tech. It's overwhelmingly put down to inadequate stakeholder engagement and alignment.
Precisely. It's a people problem, fundamentally, not a processing problem.
Which sounds almost counterintuitive for digital transformation.
It does, doesn't it?
Right.
But what's fascinating here, and what that 70% failure rate really highlights, is that success hinges entirely on this unprecedented level of coordination.
Coordination across
This incredibly complex pharma ecosystem. We're talking patients, regulators, healthcare providers.
Yeah.
Groups that often have very different priorities and, frankly, move at different speeds.
So you're trying to innovate like lightning.
Right, while also coordinating with groups that, quite rightly, have to move cautiously because of safety rules and regulations. That friction, that lack of successful alignment, that's the root cause of that high failure rate, which is exactly why we have to start this whole conversation with, well, the human challenge.
Okay, let's unpack this then. If people are the main hurdle, who exactly are these stakeholders pharma needs to get on the same page with to beat those odds? And what makes coordinating them so tricky?
Well, we can basically map out three primary groups, and each one brings its own unique set of constraints, its own needs.
Right.
First, and you could argue most importantly, you've got the patients and their families. They're the ultimate reason for all this, right?
End users, yeah.
Exactly. But they've shifted from being just passive recipients of medicine. Now they expect to be active partners. They want digital tools, intuitive platforms that actually enhance their whole treatment experience.
Okay, but that immediately creates a challenge, doesn't it? Because patient populations aren't uniform. You've got massive differences in digital literacy, access to technology.
Absolutely. That's a huge pressure point. You can't just design a slick app for the young tech-savvy crowd.
Right.
You have this fundamental need to ensure equitable access, support for everyone, regardless of their background, their tech skills, where they live. If you leave people behind, you're not just missing a market segment.
You're failing on the public health mission, too.
Precisely. So that's group one. Then the second critical group, healthcare providers, the HCPs, their buy-in, their actual use of these digital tools, that's the crucial bridge.
The bridge between the tech and the actual patient outcome.
Exactly. But the challenge here is immense. Unlike your internal teams, HCPs are already drowning in work. They're time-constrained, juggling competing priorities.
And probably skeptical. They see new digital tools and just think, great, more admin.
That's often the default reaction, yeah. Another portal, or the login, more data entry. Especially when burnout is already so high in the profession.
So how do you overcome that resistance?
Well, the industry can't just push products onto them. It demands really robust, comprehensive training, sure, but more than that. A crystal clear value proposition, meaning proof. Proof of clinical benefit, obviously, but crucially, proof that the tool will actually save them time, or at least not add to their burden. Administrative relief, not burden. If it doesn't make their life easier, realistically, they won't use it consistently.
Makes sense. Okay, so patients, providers. Who's the third group?
And then, finally, you have the gatekeepers. The regulatory authorities. Think FDA in the US, EMA in Europe, and their counterparts globally.
The ones holding the keys to the kingdom.
Pretty much. The sources we looked at describe them as arguably the most influential group because, well, nothing gets to market without their approval.
And digital tech must really throw a wrench in their usual processes.
Completely. It challenges all the traditional paradigms. How do you evaluate and approve a therapeutic intervention that's basically just software? How do you monitor drug safety using real-time unstructured data from wearables or apps instead of just controlled trial data?
Right, the old rule book doesn't quite fit these new scenarios. So how does pharma navigate that when the regulations themselves are still evolving?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
The core strategy has to be dialogue, constant early dialogue. You can't just develop something in a silo and then present it to regulators at the end.
You need to bring them along for the ride.
Exactly. Show them the data, explain the safety models, the algorithms, well before anything is finalized. It's this continuous collaborative approach that's essential for bridging that gap between cutting-edge innovation and the non-negotiable need for patient safety.
Without that early buy-in.
The most brilliant digital solution could just stall indefinitely,
Right.
stuck in regulatory limbo.
Okay, that lays out the human complexity really well. Patients, providers, regulators, a tough balancing act.
It really is. Now, maybe we can transition from that challenge of coordination to the sheer scale of the investment involved, because patient expectations, they've completely flipped.
Right.
Research suggests, what, 70%? Around 70% of patients now expect pharma companies to offer digital health solutions. Not just pills, but tools that genuinely improve their treatment journey.
That demand basically forces their hand on investment then.
It absolutely does. Multi-million-dollar investments are becoming table stakes.
And this is where we shift from pure strategy into the hard numbers, the finance side. We're looking at a pretty comprehensive framework, right? Addressing 7 key patient-centric digital challenges.
That's right, 7 core areas. And, importantly, we're not talking about small pilot programs or experiments here.
No, the figures are serious. The total investment needed just to implement these 7 patient-focused initiatives, it ranges somewhere between $20.8 million and $24.6 million.
Yeah, per initiative area, roughly.
And over a relatively tight timeline, too, about 28 months. That's a lot of capital fast.
It is a staggering upfront cost, no question.
Yeah.
But it's crucial to see it against the backdrop of the potential returns.
Which are?
Equally staggering, frankly. The average expected return on investment, the ROI, across these 7 initiatives combined, it sits at a massive 415%.
415% ROI. Okay.
So when you see numbers like that, it reframes the conversation. This isn't just spending, it's very calculated, high-reward strategic positioning for the future.
Right. It's an investment, not an expense line. Let's drill down a bit then. Where's the biggest money going? And where are those really eye-popping returns coming from? Maybe we can group these.
Yeah, we can probably cluster them. Let's start with the initiatives rooted in deep science and data. First up, personalized medicine platform development.
Okay, sounds foundational.
It absolutely is. This is about building the infrastructure for, well, the future of how medicine is practiced, tailoring treatments to individual genetic profiles.
Requires some serious expertise, I imagine.
Oh, definitely. You need specialists in clinical genomics, bioinformatics. The tech investment itself involves things like scalable systems for managing huge amounts of genomic data, plus AI capabilities for really complex analysis, like variant classification.
And the return on getting that right, moving beyond one size fits all.
It's profound, an expected 520% ROI. But even more importantly, a projected 50% reduction in adverse drug events.
Wow, so that directly links that high-tech spend to tangible patient safety improvement.
Exactly. It's not just about efficiency. It's better, safer medicine.
Okay, staying in that high science, data-heavy area, what about real-world evidence collection, or RWE?
Right, RWE. This is all about gathering and analyzing patient data from outside the controlled environment of clinical trial.
So data from electronic health records, insurance claims, patient registries, maybe even wearables.
Precisely. All that messy, real-world data. And again, it requires specific expertise, epidemiology, data science, to make sense of it reliably.
And the big win here, why invest so much in wrangling that data?
Speed. The main benefit of having robust RWE capabilities is accelerating the whole drug development lifecycle. It can inform trial design, support regulatory submissions, and improve post-market safety monitoring.
Faster time to market, basically.
Significantly faster. The source material points to RWE enabling potentially a 30% reduction in clinical development timelines.
30% in an industry where development takes years and costs billions. That's enormous.
It's a massive competitive advantage. That time saved easily justifies the investment many times over.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've got the deep data infrastructure. Now, what about the actual digital products that patients and doctors interact with? This is where DTX comes in, right? Digital therapeutics.
Yes, DTX. And this is where things get really interesting, maybe even a bit disruptive.
Because these aren't pills or injections.
No. They are software-based interventions. We're talking apps, sometimes games, maybe connected sensors, designed to complement or in some cases even replace traditional drugs for certain conditions.
That feels like a huge leap.
It is, and it's arguably the most audacious area of investment we're seeing because the expertise needed is completely different.
How so?
Well, you're not just running clinical trials for chemical compounds anymore. You have to design and execute rigorous clinical trials specifically for software, which means navigating the whole world of medical device development regulations.
A whole different regulatory pathway.
Exactly. But the potential reward, it's off the charts. This is where we see the highest cited ROI figure in the data.
Okay, hit me with it.
An almost unbelievable 680% ROI.
680%. Wow. Okay, that sounds almost too good to be true. Giving the regulatory hurdles, convincing doctors to prescribe an app. What's the catch? Why isn't every single pharma company throwing everything at DTX right now?
That incredible return is entirely dependent on one critical factor: achieving and maintaining high patient adherence.
Getting people to actually use the software consistently.
Precisely. Which, as anyone in health knows, is notoriously difficult. If the patient doesn't engage with the DTX as prescribed, the therapeutic effect just isn't there. So the big hurdle isn't just building the tech, it's mastering user experience design, behavioral science.
And proving it works in the real world.
Yes, proving to regulators that the software is safe and effective when used by real patients in uncontrolled settings. That 680% ROI is driven by the promise of things like a 50% improvement in treatment adherence for chronic conditions like diabetes or depression, where adherence is often poor.
Okay, so the complexity of getting the software validated and ensuring real-world use, that's the price of admission for that massive potential return.
You could put it that way.
Yeah.
It's a high bar.
All right. Now, maybe moving to something a bit more straightforward, perhaps. More direct patient engagement tools, like patient portals and mobile app integration.
Yes, this is more about enhancing the overall patient experience around their existing treatment or condition management. Things secure messaging with their care team, easy appointment scheduling, tracking symptoms or health metrics.
The kind of thing many of us expect in other parts of our lives now.
Exactly. And the value here is very tangible, especially on the operational side for the pharma company or provider. The data shows they see things like a 35% reduction in administrative phone calls.
Just from having good self-service tools. That's clear efficiency.
Efficiency combined with better engagement,
Hmm.
less friction for the patient, lower operating costs, and it shows up in satisfaction scores too. We see figures like a 45% improvement in patient satisfaction. That's real, measurable value.
Okay, makes sense. So we've covered data platforms, novel therapies like DTX, patient engagement tools. What's left in this patient-centric investment bucket?
The final piece, which is really foundational to everything else, is patient data privacy and security.
Ah, the essential plumbing, encryption, identity management, making sure you're compliant with GDPR, EPA, all those regulations.
Exactly. It's maybe less glamorous, it's often expensive, and it's largely invisible when done right. But it underpins absolutely everything.
And the ROI here isn't just avoiding fines, presumably.
No, it's much more strategic than that. Of course, strong security leads to significant savings, like a 75% reduction in security incident costs, which can be huge.
Right.
But the most critical return, I think, is measured in trust. When patients feel their data is truly secure and handled ethically.
They're more willing to share it.
Precisely.
Yeah.
The data suggests robust privacy and security measures result in about a 40% enhancement in patient willingness to share their health data.
Wow.
And that trust, that willingness to share data, is the fuel for almost all the other high ROI initiatives we've just talked about. The personalized medicine, the RW, even the DTX effectiveness. Trust is, quite literally, a measurable asset here.
Okay, so summing up this part. We're talking serious money, $20 to $25 million per challenge area, roughly. But it's unlocking potentially huge returns, often 400% plus, personalized medicine, RWE, ETX, patient portal security, all focused on the patient.
That's the core picture, yes.
But all that investment, all that potential ROI, it doesn't mean much if you can only make it work in one country, right? Pharma is global.
Exactly. And this is where the complexity ramps up significantly. You have to implement all these sophisticated digital changes, but do it while navigating this incredibly fragmented landscape of regulations, cultures, data laws across dozens of countries simultaneously.
So welcome to the globalization challenge.
Precisely. And this introduces a whole new set of initiatives, another 7 distinct challenge areas focused specifically on making that digital transformation work at a global scale.
And the investment profile here?
Slightly higher, actually. The total investment roadmap for tackling these 7 globalization challenges is estimated at around $22.8 million to $26.4 million, spread over a slightly longer period, maybe 30 months.
Okay. And the ROI?
Still high.
Still very high, but slightly moderated compared to the purely patient-centric ones. The average expected ROI here is around 385%. You could almost think of this investment as protecting and enabling the value created by the first set of initiatives.
Makes sense. So let's get into these global challenges. Where do you start when you're trying to manage all this complexity across borders?
Well, probably with the most foundational and often most frustrating piece, cross-border data management.
Dealing with GDPR, data sovereignty laws popping up everywhere.
Exactly. You've got strict rules about where patient data can be stored, how it can be transferred, who can access it. And the rules are different in Europe, the US, Asia, Latin America.
Sounds like a legal and technical nightmare. What kind of expertise do you need just to handle that?
It's highly specialized. You need legal experts who understand the nuances of things like GDPR, but also technical teams who can implement complex mechanisms like binding corporate rule BCRs.
BCRs.
Oh.
What are those in simple terms? Think of them as legally binding internal contracts within a multinational company. They allow the company to transfer personal data, say from the EU to the US or India, legally, but only if the entire corporate group worldwide commits to upholding EU-level data protection standards for that data.
So it's like creating your own internal, legally approved data transfer bubble.
That's a decent way to put it. It's incredibly complex and labor-intensive to set up and get approved by regulators.
But the benefit must be worth it.
Oh, absolutely. Getting BCRs or similar mechanisms in place can lead to something like a 60% reduction in the time and effort needed for data transfer compliance. It streamlines everything, allowing you to run global analytics, manage global trials more efficiently.
Okay, data flow is critical, but you can't just focus on local laws. You need consistency across the board too, right?
Exactly. Which brings us to the next challenge, global standards implementation. This is about harmonizing quality systems, manufacturing processes, clinical trial conduct, making sure things are done the same way to the same high standard everywhere.
Referencing things like ISO standards or ICH guidelines for clinical practice.
Precisely those kinds of global benchmarks. Standardization is the key to efficiency and quality control at scale.
And the payoff.
Measurable improvements in consistency. The data points to things like a 40% reduction in operational variations between different sites or regions, and a significant 50% improvement in performance during regulatory audits. That boosts quality and regulator confidence worldwide.
Okay, standards are crucial for consistency, but there's a tension there, isn't there? Because you can't just impose a single global standard on everything. Markets are different, cultures are different.
You've hit on the exact tension. That's why the necessary counterbalance to global standards is an equal investment in local market customization.
Tailoring things to fit the local context.
Absolutely. Global efficiency needs local relevance to actually work. This requires a different skill set, cultural adaptation researchers, localization platforms that handle language and cultural nuances, market analysts who understand local healthcare systems and patient behaviors.
Because a digital tool that feels like it was just parachuted in from headquarters.
Nobody will use it. Or worse, it might be misunderstood or even offensive. Effective customization is key to adoption.
And we can measure the impact of getting that right.
Yes. The source material highlights a potential 70% improvement in user engagement rates in international markets when digital solutions are properly localized and culturally adapted. Engagement is the proof.
Okay, that's compelling. Now, sticking with the local angle, but back on the regulatory side, international regulatory compliance. This sounds like more than just following local rules.
It is. It's about developing coordinated submission strategies across multiple major regulatory agencies simultaneously. Imagine trying to get a new drug, or maybe a DTX approved in the US, Europe, Japan, China, Brazil, all around the same time.
Just managing the different requirements, timelines, questions from each agency must be incredibly complex with legacy systems.
It's a major bottleneck.
Yeah.
But getting that coordinated strategy right pays off massively in terms of speed and predictability.
How much speed are we talking?
Companies that master this global coordination report seeing potentially a 45% reduction in overall approval timelines across key markets, and maybe a 60% improvement in submission success rates, fewer rejections or major delays.
Huge savings in time and opportunity cost. Avoiding delays in even one major market is worth millions.
Easily.
Okay, let's circle back to culture again because it seems so critical. You mentioned customization, but there's also a specific challenge around cultural adaptation of digital solutions, right? Beyond just language translation.
Yes, this goes deeper. It requires genuine expertise in things like cultural anthropology, maybe health psychology, inclusive design principles, because health beliefs, attitudes towards technology, family involvement and care, these vary dramatically across cultures.
So respecting those differences is key.
Is essential for trust and effectiveness. And here again, we see a really phenomenal quantified benefit linked directly to that respect.
Yeah.
Proper cultural adaptation can lead to an 80% improvement in engagement within specific cultural communities.
80% engagement lift. That's massive.
It is. And perhaps even more importantly, it translates into clinical outcomes. The data suggests it can contribute to a 65% increase in healthcare adherence rates in those communities.
Wow. So cultural sensitivity isn't just nice to have, it directly drives better health outcomes.
Absolutely. It's a core part of effective healthcare delivery in a globalized world.
Okay, one last piece for the global puzzle. Operating internationally means dealing with money in different currencies, fluctuating exchange rates.
Right. Which brings us to the challenge of currency and financial risk management. This might seem purely financial, but it's essential for protecting the stability of those massive digital transformation investments we've been talking about.
How so?
Well, imagine you invest $25 million in developing a platform, expecting a 400% ROI based on global rollout. If currency exchange rates shift dramatically against you, that expected return can evaporate quickly.
So you need systems to manage that volatility.
Exactly. Things like automated hedging systems, specialized treasury expertise. These tools are needed to protect the financial viability of the entire global DT program.
And the benefit.
Significant protection for the bottom line. Effective currency risk management can lead to about a 70% reduction in currency-related financial losses.
Right.
It ensures the huge investments and their high ROIs aren't just wiped out by external market forces you can't control.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like insurance for the whole global strategy.
In a way, yes.
So let's try and wrap this up. What's the big picture here? What does all this mean for the strategic direction of the pharma industry?
Well, I think it's clear that digital transformation in pharma isn't just incremental change. It's defined by these massive, multidisciplinary, multi-million-dollar investments. We've seen figures like $20 to $26 million per challenge area.
Yeah.
And it's all driving this fundamental shift away from older product-centric models towards patient-centric, digitally enabled, and globally scalable solutions.
The strategic importance of actually succeeding seems immense.
Oh, absolutely. Success here isn't optional if you want to remain competitive. It translates directly into significant competitive advantages, tangible improvements in patient safety, and ultimately better clinical outcomes.
And achieving that success, it's clearly not just about buying the latest technology.
Not at all. It's about simultaneously mastering three incredibly complex domains. First, achieving that difficult stakeholder alignment we talked about at the start. Second, meeting rapidly evolving patient expectations with high ROI digital solutions like DTX and personalized medicine. And third, navigating that profound global complexity, the regulations, the cultures, the data laws. It's a triple challenge.
It really is.
And maybe a final thought ties back to something we saw in the data. We saw that things like investing in patient data privacy systems can lead to a 40% jump in patients' willingness to share their health data.
Right, the return on trust.
Exactly. And we also saw that deep cultural adaptation can improve community engagement by as much as 80%. So when you see these really significant quantifiable returns that are directly linked to building trust and showing cultural respect, it raises an important question, I think, for anyone listening who's involved in these kinds of transformations. If achieving these high financial and clinical returns fundamentally requires deep trust and genuine cultural understanding, what core part of your organization's mission, what essential value should absolutely never be outsourced or treated as just secondary to the technology investment itself?
That's a powerful question to consider. When the stakes are this high, what truly matters most beyond the tech? Something for all of us to think about.